Hello.
How was summer?
I was beautiful, man. It was beautiful. Peaceful, therapeutic, lots of diapers, blowouts, working out, handling business. It was a good summer.
You talked about this topic a lot in the spring. I think a lot of us anticipated an extension coming. Now that it's done, why did you want to be a part of the situation for 4 years here?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I answered a lot of these questions, and when I first got here, I didn't get here by mistake. I didn't get here by accident. It was a situation in which we talked about the president, what the future could look like, and what I had to offer and what they had to offer, and everything kind of aligned the right way. My wife signed off. She said that she was excited about it. She was happy about not just the trade and then what could come after the trade, obviously, knowing that we could be here longer than 2 years. And once we all were on the same page with that, the trade happened, and the rest is kind of, as I said before, but I think it's just more about a mutual comfort, mutual admiration, understanding what we can accomplish together, but also understanding that there's a lot I have to offer to this team, this organization, this city. There's a lot that they've offered and afforded to me, and I'm thankful for it. And I think the piece is here. Respectfully, I love this place, but without the likes of some of the guys that are on this team, there wouldn't be as much interest because you wouldn't be able to compete at the same level. And I think, having BI, having Z, having JV, Herb, keep going on, Trey, Tay, like we have a really good team, young guys. We draft Dyson. We pick up some guys. We have a guy who wins, MVP of the Eurobasket. I think we have a lot of talent, a lot of young talent, a lot of draft picks, thanks to some guys that are no longer here. So I felt like it was just a good combination of a lot of things. It made sense, and I'm excited. I'm excited about the present and the future.
And to your point, I mean, you, BI, and Zion are all under contract for the next 3 years. Does it feel like, hey, there's a real window here?
Yeah, it didn't happen by mistake. I think it was well planned, well executed. We're excited. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of things we got to work on together, chemistry-wise, and get on the court. And it's going to be some great nights and some not so great nights. But I think, all in all, I think our future is bright, and we have a chance to do a lot of special things once we come together.
Yeah, and Willie talked about, having you and BI kind of set up those workouts with the guys over the summer. How important was that for you to kind of bring everybody together and continue to build on what y'all did, last year?
Yeah, I thought it was important, right? When the season ended, I had dinner with Z and Larry, and then I reached out to our staff, and I said that, I wanted to make sure we get together in the summer. It's important that you build an off-court relationship with the guys. It's the way I lead is different, right, in terms of accountability. I want to get the most out of you, and I want you to get the most out of me, but I need to know you on a certain type of level in order to do that. And I think it's important you have those moments and those times, and it just helps you from a development standpoint to where you're able to really see what guys are doing. Like, it's one thing to say you've been working out, but I want to see it. And I think the staff, they've seen the jumps a lot of these guys have made. And it's funny because I planned this trip alongside BI and some of our other players, and my wife got COVID right before I was supposed to go. So I ended up not making the trip because I had to take care of my son, but I was able to FaceTime him and see how everything was going. And it was a good time. We had yoga on the beach, and it was exactly what I would have wanted it to be. But all in all, the guys had a good time, and I think we're in a really good space. And I think the chemistry is where it needs to be. Now it's just about getting the on-court chemistry right and spacing and the little stuff. But I'm happy to have a full training camp and be able to know everything instead of just trying to learn throughout the season.
Right. You talked last year about, once this team is fully healthy, you'll be asked to do different things than you were asked to do previously in your career. How much time have you spent this summer kind of preparing for how things will be different for you this year compared to, the rest of your career?
Yeah, I watched a lot of film, breaking down the game, breaking down spacing, play calling, understanding how to manipulate the game, not just with scoring, but with presence, with poise, with pace, with the ability to empower people, not just getting assists, but making sure people in the right position. And that in order to be, successful, you got to be selfless. You got to be willing to sacrifice. And I think collectively we're going to have to do that. It's going to be certain guys' nights on certain nights, and you got to be comfortable with that. And I played every type of role. I've been a scorer. I done came off the bench. I done not played in games. I done showed up to the arena. knowing I'm not going to play. It's a different type of feeling when you're a professional. But I think for me, it's just about winning. It's about doing what it takes to win and making sure everybody's on that wave. The individual stuff will happen when it's supposed to happen. But if you win, as I've said before, you win, you get what you deserve, not just financially, but also from an accolade standpoint.
From a player's perspective, obviously there's the continuity of bringing back, a lot of the roster from last year. But what kind of little things do you see that are going to help you guys early on in bringing back so many of these guys from last year?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we like each other. I think that helps. You got to have a good relationship with your teammates. You see them more than you see your family. You see them more than you see everybody else. So that helps. And then just understanding people's games, who's cutting, who's not, who likes to shoot, who doesn't, who's more in tune to want to guard the best player on the other team, tendencies, who likes to drive left, who likes to drive right, who likes to take 2 dribbles and pass. Like, you need to know a little bit about everybody. And I think now we're in a better point where they understand me, they understand my mentality, I understand them, I understand how they work, I understand how they like to, to be coached, I understand who's going to challenge me and who's not. Like, I think it's important, those types of things heading into a season, and chemistry matters, and being around the same group matters. Obviously, there's tweaks that'll happen throughout your career where stuff happens. That's a part of the game. But all in all, I think we're in a good space, we're in a good spot, and we got a chance to build on some of the things we did last year and try to take another step forward.
I know the situation kind of resolved itself, but as the president of the PA, what were your conversations like with Adam Silver throughout the Robert Sarver situation?
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations with Adam. I was actually in the middle of a lift during one of our conversations, and it was just more updates on the process. I think I was interested and curious into the process. Obviously, it started with the Baxter Holmes story over a year ago, where it talked about the misogyny, it talked about the racist remarks, and how it was essentially a hostile environment, which is unacceptable. I think we talked about in this statement with Tamika. I did a lot of meetings behind the scenes to learn about exactly what was happening. I think I implore people to read, I think it was 36, 39 pages of what they were able to release from the internal investigation. I thought that was important from a transparency standpoint, to really see Adam and making strides to show those things. Generally speaking, companies don't show those types of things, especially when there's misconduct in the workplace that makes things look worse at times. And I think that showed courage from him to be willing to show that to everybody, because he didn't have to. He could have kept it private. But we had a lot of conversations around how we're going to make this situation right. And obviously you can't, in terms of how the people were affected in decades and decades of poor treatment and malpractice, if you will. But for him to step down, I think that shows that it was handled how they thought it should be handled. This was in a situation in which the PA had control. We could just give direction, we could give our input and our opinion, but this is something that had to be handled by the league. And obviously, if it came down to it, they could have, forced a 3/4 majority vote of ownership and try to do it that way. But personally, I don't know if that would have happened as fast as him stepping down, because that's a legal process that could take time. So all in all, I'm happy that he has spoken and decided to sell his share of the team, and thankful for the changes that will come.
What are your conversations like with players during that period where it seemed like there were a lot of players starting to kind of speak out against it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important you use your platform and you speak out against things you're passionate about and things that you feel need to be changed or need to be addressed. I think those guys that did it, they have every right to do it. I just think it's important that you know exactly what's going on before you speak. And I think those guys did. But the conversations were more so about what are we doing collectively? How can we help? How can we impact this in a positive way? Obviously, understanding this was something that's very negative, not just to the people affected, but to our league. It's bad publicity. So how do we kind of impact this in a way in which we can help make our league look like a league that cares, a league that is about the players, but also about the staff and the people that work within the organization, and also about the fans. And I think we handled it appropriately on our end, and I'm proud of the messaging. I'm proud of the statements that went out. I'm proud of the support that our players displayed.
You've sort of touched on this before, playing different roles, but this is the first time you're heading into camp as sort of a lead ball handler. Has that changed your approach or your mentality going into the season?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I'm a product of my environment. I did what I had to do in each environment to be successful, to take care of my family, and I've done it consistently. And although the role is different, the situation is different, it's still basketball. It still reads. It's still making the right plays. It's still playing with pace. It's understanding the offense better, having more control over play calls. Although when I played alongside Dame, we still called the plays. You know what I mean? Like, respectfully, Terry did a great job of teaching us his offense. And then when we got Chauncey, it was the same thing, to where you get to a certain level or status within an organization, you have input and you have some control. And I think the same goes for here, to where, you know, Willie's done a tremendous job and will do a tremendous job of teaching us to where we'll feel comfortable calling plays. And now that I'll know the plays, that'll be helpful in terms of spacing and understanding how to get guys going when the JV needs a touch, when the Z need a touch, when his BI need to get going. And I take responsibility in, you know, being a leader and doing those things. But I think it's more about just playing the game. Like, I know how to play this game at a high level. I know how to play it different ways. And I think you'll see that this season.
A lot of guys on this team have only had to play against Zion in practice. You've played against him, you know, in a real game. What makes him unique?
He's strong. He's physical. He's a foul magnet. He draws a lot of fouls. Gets to the free throw line a lot. He'll get us in a bonus early in most games, which is nice, as long as I make the free throws, right? He's a force to be reckoned with. I think his production speaks for itself on how consistent he's been when he's played. I think it's just him and like two other Hall of Famers that shoot over 60%, you know, over 25 points a game. His input and his impact on the game will be felt every night, and he should make the game easier for all of us. I think that's what great players do, right? The game should be easier, and you should make the game look easy, even though it's very hard.
CJ, you said earlier to Christian that there's a lot of things that the team has to work on chemistry-wise. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a different year, different expectations, different roster. Obviously, a lot of the same players, but you had a guy like Z, and you have to change some things in terms of how you play. You got to understand spacing better. Understand, does he like to go left? Absolutely. But how are you going to get him going left? Understanding consistency, right, and approach, consistency in play calling, consistency in freedom. We played a certain type of way last year, right? I got there 26 games plus the playoffs. I want us to be successful early. We open up at Brooklyn, then we go to Charlotte. Those are two teams with veterans. Obviously, one all-world player, well, two and a half. You know, you got KD, you got Kyrie, you got a lot of other players that are very, very good, and they play at a high level. So you need to get off, you hit the ground running. Like, there's no time to kind of feel things out. It's not like you know, opening up against a young team. You're opening up against a team who's got championship aspirations. So when I say we got to tighten some things up, I mean, we need to truly understand, you know, how we going to not just coexist but thrive on the court, and what spaces we want preferably to exist in, whether that's the 15-foot, like B.I. likes to play around 15 feet. You know, how are we going to do this, and what is it going to look like consistently? You know, we're going to have great nights, but I think that's what I mean by that. Like, it takes time to develop basketball chemistry, right? Like, we can kick it and go to dinner, but now we got to figure out how to make it work on the court, and I think we will. I'm excited about the challenge of competing at a high level and opening up against a very good team.
And Willie and Griff talked about coming into the season with expectations, kind of, you know, everybody having an idea of what you guys should do this year. You know, a lot of young guys on this team haven't dealt with that. You obviously have. Just what's your perspective on just making sure the team's prepared for that?
Yeah, I think it starts with having a sense of urgency, and that's kind of what I spoke on. Like, this is the first time in which people think that we probably should make the playoffs, we probably should compete, and I don't know if they've had that in past years. So it starts with holding yourself accountable. It starts with really getting a hold of what your own personal and what your own team expectations are, understanding that team expectation from within is more important than what you're going to get from outsiders. I think historically, if you focus on the work, you focus on understanding personnel, understanding plays, understanding spacing, understanding what Willie wants to accomplish, and you're willing to sacrifice and be selfless, you'll be successful. And generally speaking, you should outperform whatever expectations are out there for you. When you start letting the noise creep in, whether that's good or bad, I think that's when you're affected individually and we're affected as a team. There's going to be nights where you guys think that we're great and everything looks so perfect, and there's going to be nights where you're like, this isn't working. And if you believe one way or the other, you've lost. You got to just be consistent. And I think that's what I've done my whole life. Despite the noises around me, whether good or bad, I know who I am and I know what I stand for. And I think if our team knows who we are and what we stand for, then we'll be successful.
This kind of follows up on that. You've played on a team that had championship aspirations and expectations in the Western Conference Finals. Have you thought about how you'll use your voice, letting, I guess, this team grow organically and be itself, but also sharing your experiences at the right time?
Yeah, I think timing is everything. Right now, this is a fun time. It's media day. Everybody's excited. New jerseys. We got some new jerseys you guys will see and all that stuff. But then the work starts, and I think that's what's really important. It's the work that matters. Everything else doesn't matter. You have to put real work in, not just this summer going into the season, but during the season. You got to execute and practice. Like, the practice now is going to determine how successful you are later. And I think that's the approach that I'm taking, and that's what I'll share. I mean, playing in big games is what it is. Like, that's just a moment. But you got to be prepared for the moment in advance. And I think that's what we're working on right now is spacing, is play calling, execution. Every game comes down to the last 5 minutes. So you need to understand how to do a 2-minute drive like Russell Wilson last night, right? Like, the game wasn't going well, but he still executed down the stretch. And I think that's what we got to get to in order to have success, in order to be able to be a playoff team, in order to not have to play in a playing game. You got to be able to finish games. And that's going to start with how we prepare now and how we approach the second end of a two-a-day. Like, when you don't really feel like practicing, when you're tired, you got to be able to lock in, because you're going to be tired in January, February, March, and April when it matters.
CJ, you mentioned getting here only having 26 games, and now you'll have time to learn the offense. How much of the offense did you actually know last year in the playoffs?
And now that it's over, I can tell you. Just put it like this. I work really hard on, like, knowing plays, and I like to think that I'm pretty smart. So I had the same playbook with variations for 8-9 years, so I knew 1 through 5, like, before I got here. I got here, I landed at midnight, I played the game at 6 p.m., so you can imagine I didn't know a lot of plays at that point. I knew 2 out-of-bounds plays and 2 offensive plays. As the season progressed, I learned a lot of the plays, but there was a couple times in the playoffs where Willie would call a play, and I'll be breaking the ball up, and I'll be like, I don't know what that is. And I would look at Larry, and he'd be like, I don't know either. So, I mean, it was trial and error. We learned on the fly, and I did my best to go through plays after practices and dry run-throughs. But more the story is we were still successful, and we still figured it out, and that's what you're going to have to do. I don't know the plays this year. I don't know 1 through 5. I'll be able to get guys in spots, and I was still able to do it in spurts, but sometimes I just didn't know the play because it was 10 games in and 20 games in. Now the playoff starts. But I think it's helpful to be around from the beginning. Like, imagine you change your job in the middle of a season, and then they ask you to do a lot, and you still trying to figure out, like, what does this job entail? Like, what do they really want from me? And I think going into this season, we understand it, and I'll understand the plays, and it'll be better. It'll be more smooth offensively.
And the second one, how much weight did you put on, or would you put on, the respect of getting an All-Star nod finally?
I mean, this is year 10 now, and I don't play the game for those types of things. I think if you perform at an all-star level, you can still not make it. I think being an all-star doesn't determine team success. Like, I would like to play well at a high level and help this team win. And if that's what comes with it, great. If that's what doesn't come with it, I'm still going to sleep the same at night, and my family's still going to be okay. And as long as this team is successful, that's what really matters. But I would like to think that historically I've played at or near an all-star level, and our team has been successful. Now, whether you get voted in or not is a different story, but we have the talent to win games and to be impactful and to make a run in the playoffs, and I think that's where my focus is at. And if you do those things, you'll reap some of the benefits. But I think I'd rather be All-NBA than an All-Star, because that's to finish the season. You know what I'm saying? That's like the best of the best, as opposed to some starters and then some fan votes.